The first time I saw a human child speak back to a military instructor, I genuinely thought I was about to witness an execution. Let me explain something about Galactic Protocol Academy, where I serve as the Assistant Tactical Oversight Observer. Yes, that's a fancy title for someone who basically makes sure nobody blows up the training grounds. The Academy has stood for 600 cycles, training elite soldiers from 47 different species. We have rules. Strict ones. The kind that get carved into stone and worshipped by drill instructors who eat raw metal for breakfast. Rule number 1. When an instructor speaks, you listen. You don't breathe too loudly. You certainly don't interrupt. And you absolutely, under no circumstances, talk back with a smug grin on your face. But humans? Oh, humans had other plans. My name is Vector, and I'm a Kralthine, which means I have 4 eyes, 3 of which were focused on the absolute disaster unfolding in Training Bay 7. The 4th eye was watching the emergency medical team I'd called in advance. Because I'm not an idiot. The instructor in question was Brutaner the Unyielding. 12 feet of pure muscle, scales that could deflect plasma rounds, and a voice that could shatter reinforced glass at 50 paces. He'd trained warriors for 2 centuries. Grown soldiers wet themselves when he cleared his throat. Standing across from him, barely reaching his knee joint, was a human child. Maybe 9 rotations old by their reckoning. Her name was Maya Kowalski, and she had her arms crossed over her chest like she was about to lecture her own instructor on battlefield tactics. This wasn't going to end well. Cadet Kowalski, Brutaner's voice made the walls vibrate. Several of the Threxian recruits in the back row actually fainted. You will demonstrate the infiltration sequence we studied, or you will spend the next week scrubbing the waste reclamation systems with your bare hands. Maya tilted her head. Her dark hair was pulled into what humans call a ponytail, and her brown eyes sparkled with something I'd learned to recognize in humans. Mischief, mixed with terrifying competence. Instructor Brutaner, sir, she said, her voice calm and clear. The infiltration sequence you demonstrated has a 63% failure rate in urban environments. I did the math. My secondary heart stopped. Just stopped cold. Brutaner's scales turned from their normal green to a dangerous shade of crimson. Excuse me? The approach vector is wrong. Maya walked toward the holographic display without being dismissed. Several cadets gasped. One prayed to their ancestor gods. See, you're assuming the enemy has standard patrol patterns. But humans don't do standard. If I were defending that building, I'd have random checkpoints, motion sensors at irregular intervals, and probably a couple of really mean dogs. Dogs? Brutaner's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. Dogs don't follow patrol schedules. Dogs just want to bite intruders and protect their territory. They're chaos agents. Maya grinned. The honey badger doesn't wait for orders, sir. There was a moment of absolute silence. I checked my translator implant twice, because surely I had misheard. Had this child just referenced some Earth creature to a combat instructor who'd fought in the Keltharian Wars? Brutaner's jaw muscles twitched. What did you just say? It's a human expression, sir. Means you can't always plan for every variable. Sometimes you have to adapt in real time. Be unpredictable. Cause a little chaos yourself. Like a honey badger. She shrugged. They're these small earth animals that fight things 50 times their size and don't care about the odds. I pulled up a quick data search on honey badgers. By the eternal void, these creatures were terrifying. Fearless, aggressive, and apparently immune to venom that could drop a full-grown Kralthine in seconds. Of course, humans had taught their children to emulate them. Brutaner stared at the child. The entire training bay held its breath. I had my hand hovering over the emergency containment field button, ready to separate them before the instructor did something we'd all regret. You think you're a honey badger cadet? His voice could have frozen nitrogen. No, sir. Maya's smile widened. I think the infiltration sequence should account for them. And then, something happened that I'd never seen in my 15 years at the academy. Brutaner's scales shifted from crimson to a pale blue, the color that indicated deep thought. He studied the holographic display, then looked back at the tiny human who'd just challenged 2 centuries of tactical doctrine. Show me. He stepped aside. Demonstrate your infiltration sequence. If you fail, you scrub waste reclamation for a month. And if I succeed? Maya was already manipulating the controls. Then I learned something from a 9-year-old human, which would be humiliating, but I suppose there's a first time for everything. The other cadets, a mix of species from across the galaxy, leaned forward. I noticed that the human adults in the observation deck, the diplomatic escorts and cultural liaisons, were grinning. They knew something we didn't. Maya reprogrammed the simulation. The holographic building remained the same, a standard military compound with guard towers, patrol routes, and defensive systems. But she added variables, random elements, weather changes, equipment malfunctions, and yes, several aggressive canines with unpredictable movement patterns. Standard approach gets you caught here. She pointed to a checkpoint. So instead, you create a distraction. Something small but irritating, like releasing a swarm of sensor gnats near the east wall. Guards investigate because it could be a system malfunction. While they're distracted, you approach from the west. The west wall has motion sensors, said Brutanner, but his tone had shifted. He was engaged now, curious. It does, but motion sensors have a reset delay of 0.7 seconds when they're triggered. If you time it right, you trigger them with a decoy, wait for the reset, and slip through during the dead zone. She looked up at him. Humans call it thread the needle. It's risky, but that's the point. Predictable tactics are safe. Safe tactics are easy to counter. She ran the simulation. Her avatar moved through the compound like water finding cracks in stone. Every time the system predicted her path, she shifted. Every time a patrol pattern should have caught her, she was somewhere else. The dogs chased decoys. The sensors caught shadows. The guards investigated false alarms. In 3 minutes and 42 seconds, her avatar reached the objective and extracted successfully. The training bay was silent. Brutanner studied the results. His scales cycled through several colors indicating confusion, surprise, and finally, grudging respect. Your success rate was 89%. He spoke slowly, like he was admitting to a crime. That's 16% higher than the Academy standard. Could be better, Maya said. I got lucky with the guard rotation timing. In a real scenario, I'd probably need a backup plan for the East Corridor. A backup plan. This child had achieved near-perfect results and was already thinking about improvements. I watched Brutanner the Unyielding do something I'd never seen. He knelt down, bringing his massive frame closer to the child's level. Where did you learn this tactical approach, Cadet Kowalski? My mom's a hostage negotiator. My dad's a wildlife biologist. They both taught me the same thing. If you want to predict behavior, you have to understand motivation. Guards want to protect. Dogs want to guard their territory. Sensors want to detect threats. Everything has a purpose. You just have to work around it, instead of through it. She paused. Also, I play a lot of strategy games with my brother. He's really good at finding exploits. Brutanner stood. His scales settled into a calm gold color I'd only seen when he was genuinely impressed. The Academy has trained warriors for 600 cycles, he said, his voice carrying across the bay. We teach discipline, strength, precision, and courage. We've produced some of the finest soldiers in the galaxy. He looked down at Maya. Apparently, we don't teach them to think like honey badgers. The other cadets erupted in chatter. I heard several species expressing confusion, asking what honey badgers had to do with military tactics. The human observers in the deck above were laughing, actually laughing, like this chaos was somehow delightful. Instructor Brutanner, I called through the communication system. Should I note this training session as successful or catastrophic? I genuinely cannot tell. Successful, he replied. Disturbingly successful. He addressed the entire bay. New training protocol, effective immediately. Every tactical scenario will now include variable chaos factors, random elements, unpredictable agents. If a 9-year-old human can achieve 89% success by thinking like an Earth predator, then we've been teaching stale doctrine for too long. Maya raised her hand. Sir, honey badgers aren't actually predators. They're mustelids. More like opportunistic omnivores with boundary issues. That's even worse, muttered Grell, a Threxian cadet who'd been studying human culture. They're not even specialized killing machines. They're just angry and determined. That's what makes them dangerous, said Maya. Nobody expects something that size to be that aggressive. Surprise is better than armor sometimes. Brutaner looked at me. All four of my eyes met his gaze. Vector, add xenobiology to the tactical curriculum. If we're going to train alongside humans, we need to understand how their planet shaped their thinking. Understood. I was already pulling up Earth databases. The information that flooded my screens was horrifying. Humans evolved on a death world where everything tried to kill them. The cute animals were venomous. The plants were toxic. The weather was violently unpredictable. The friendly-looking mammals carried diseases that could wipe out entire populations. And humans had looked at all of this and decided to domesticate the predators, eat the toxic plants, and build civilizations in the most dangerous locations possible. No wonder their children referenced chaos agents as tactical advantages. The training session continued, but something had fundamentally shifted. The other cadets were watching Maya differently now, not with mockery or dismissal, but with a kind of wary curiosity. She'd done something none of them had managed. She'd made an instructor change his mind. After the session ended, I found Maya in the cadet commons area, drinking something called chocolate milk and sketching tactical diagrams on a data pad. Cadet Kowalski, I approached, carefully. That was an impressive demonstration. She looked up, unbothered by my four eyes and chitinous exterior. Human children adapted disturbingly fast to alien biology. Thanks, Observer Vector. I was really nervous I'd get in trouble. You talked back to Brutaner the Unyielding. Multiple species have gone extinct for less. Yeah, but I was respectful about it. She took a sip of her drink. My mom always says you can disagree with someone if you do it professionally. And I really did do the math on those patrol patterns. The statistical analysis doesn't lie. I sat down across from her, my thorax segments adjusting to the human-sized furniture. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why are you here? At the academy? Most human children your age are in standard education facilities, learning mathematics and literature. Oh, I do that too. This is like an exchange program. Maya's eyes lit up. My parents thought it would be good for me to see other species, learn different perspectives. Plus, the academy has the best tactical simulation systems in 3 sectors, way better than the games back home. You see deadly combat training as entertainment? Not entertainment, education. There's a difference. She showed me her datapad. The sketches were incredibly detailed, showing multiple approach vectors for various compound types. If I want to work in interstellar security or diplomatic protection someday, I need to understand how different species think about safety and threat assessment. You can't protect people if you don't understand their vulnerabilities. This child was 9 years old and already planning a career in galactic security. The honey badger comment, I ventured. That was calculated, wasn't it? You knew it would confuse Instructor Brutaner. Maya grinned. Maybe a little. Humans have this advantage in the galaxy. Everyone underestimates us because we're new and we do things weird. But weird works sometimes. Being unpredictable is its own kind of armor. Terrifying, I muttered. You're all absolutely terrifying. Thanks. She seemed to take that as a compliment. Over the next few days, Maya's influence spread through the academy like a virus. A helpful virus, but still concerning. Other cadets started questioning tactical doctrine, not disrespectfully, but thoughtfully. They added chaos variables to their simulations. They studied Earth predators and prey animals, looking for behavioral patterns that could apply to military tactics. The Threxians became obsessed with pack hunting strategies from wolves. The Quillian cadets studied ambush tactics from Earth's big cats. The Mercathi, who normally preferred direct confrontation, started analyzing persistence hunting techniques from humans' own evolutionary history. And through it all, Maya Kowalski walked around the academy like she owned the place, helping cadets optimize their chaos variables and explaining why sometimes the best plan was to have no plan at all. Instructor Brutaner called me to his office 3 days after the infamous training session. Observer Vector, he said, his scales a troubled purple color. I need you to be honest with me. Have I been teaching wrong for 2 centuries? I considered my answer carefully. Brutaner could crush my thorax with one hand, but he'd asked for honesty. Not wrong, sir, incomplete. You've been teaching species who evolved in relatively stable environments to fight using logic and predictability. Humans evolved in chaos. They don't just adapt to unpredictable situations. They create them on purpose. It's not wrong. It's just different. Different, he repeated. The child made me question everything I know about tactical doctrine by referencing a small mammal. To be fair, sir, it's a very aggressive mammal. He almost smiled. Almost. The council is requesting a full report on the training modifications. They want to know if human influence is beneficial or dangerous to Academy standards. Both, I said. Definitely both. Your recommendation? I thought about Maya's 89% success rate, about the engaged curiosity I'd seen in cadets who'd been going through the motions for months, about the fact that real combat rarely followed predictable patterns, and humans seem to instinctively understand that. Embrace it, I said. We're training soldiers for a galaxy that's constantly changing. Political alliances shift, technology advances, new threats emerge. If we keep teaching static tactics, we're preparing cadets for wars that already ended. Humans think dynamically. We should learn from that. Brutanner's scales shifted to gold. The council won't like it. The council doesn't have to fight in the field. These cadets do. He nodded slowly. Then we continue. Modified tactical doctrine, chaos variables included. And we keep that human child in the program. She's either going to revolutionize military training or cause a complete disaster. Sir? I stood to leave. Yes? With humans? It's usually both. The door closed behind me, and I headed back to my observation post, where I could monitor the training bays and make sure nobody died. As I walked through the corridors, I passed Maya teaching a group of Quillian cadets about something called guerrilla warfare, using diagrams of Earth's forests and mountains. The Quillians were taking notes. Somewhere in the universe, the honey badger didn't wait for orders. It just attacked whatever threatened it, fearless and determined. And somehow, that had become a military doctrine at the most prestigious academy in the galaxy. Because a 9-year-old human girl had talked back to an instructor and lived. Human children were terrifying. The incident with Maya Kowalski should have been an isolated event. A strange footnote in academy history that instructors would laugh about over fermented beverages at reunions. But nothing involving humans ever stayed isolated for long. 3 weeks after the honey badger speech, the Academy received an emergency request from the Outer Rim Defense Coalition. They needed a training team to assist with a hostage situation on Station Kelthar 9, a mining outpost where terrorists had seized control of the reactor level and were holding 47 workers captive. The Coalition wanted our best tactical minds. They got Instructor Brutanner, 3 senior analysts, and somehow, because the universe has a twisted sense of humor, Maya Kowalski tagged along as a diplomatic observer. Her mother was the hostage negotiator assigned to the crisis, and regulations stated that minor dependents couldn't be left unsupervised during active operations. So there I was, on a military transport heading toward a genuine crisis, sitting across from a child who was drawing pictures of the station layout and humming something she called a pop song. This is inappropriate, grumbled Keswick, one of the senior analysts. He was a Vornathi, all sharp angles and logical processing. A training cadet has no place in an active hostage situation. She's an observer only, said Commander Thrace, the human military liaison. She was a tall woman with silver hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. Maya stays in the command ship, no exceptions. Maya looked up from her drawings. My mom says hostage situations are 90% psychology and 10% tactical intervention. Most of them end through negotiation. Most, I repeated. Not all. Not all, she agreed cheerfully, then went back to her sketching. We arrived at Kelthar 9, 6 hours later. The station hung in space like a wounded creature, its running lights flickering irregularly. The terrorists had disabled the main communication array and were making demands through short-range transmitters. They wanted political prisoners released, money transferred, and safe passage to neutral territory. Standard hostage protocol by anyone's measure. Except the terrorists were Jarkeen, a species known for following through on threats with extreme prejudice. Maya's mother, Director Elena Kowalski, was already in the command ship's negotiation center when we docked. She was a compact woman with the same dark hair as her daughter and eyes that could probably see through solid walls. She hugged Maya briefly, then immediately returned to her communication console. Status update, she said without preamble. Terrorists have established a defensive perimeter on reactor level 3. 47 hostages, mixture of species. The leader calls himself Vorthan. He's smart, organized, and his psychological profile suggests he will execute hostages if he feels disrespected or cornered. Brutaner studied the tactical displays. Assault options. Minimal. The reactor level has only 2 access points, both heavily monitored. They've rigged explosive charges near the coolant systems. Any breach attempt will result in a meltdown that kills everyone on the station. Over 3,000 people. So we negotiate, said Commander Thrace. We've been negotiating for 8 hours. Vorthan is losing patience. Elena's jaw tightened. He's given us 12 more hours to meet his demands or he starts executing hostages. 1 per hour. The command center went quiet. 12 hours. 47 people. Mathematics painted in blood. Maya was still drawing, her stylus moving across the datapad with quick, precise strokes. I noticed she wasn't just sketching the station layout anymore. She was mapping patrol patterns, marking choke points, noting what looked like ventilation systems and maintenance access tunnels. Cadet Kowalski. Brutaner's voice carried warning. You are an observer only. I know. She didn't look up. Just keeping my brain busy. Helps me think. Elena glanced at her daughter, and something passed between them. A look of understanding that only family members shared. Then the director returned to her negotiations, speaking in calm, measured tones to a terrorist who held dozens of lives in his hands. Hours crawled past like wounded animals. Vorthan rejected every compromise. The political prisoners he wanted released had been executed years ago for crimes that would make a Jarkeen warlord proud. The money transfers were impossible without government authorization that would take days to secure. The safe passage was a non-starter because every enforcement agency in 3 sectors wanted these terrorists dead. We were watching a countdown to murder, and there was nothing anyone could do. Maya stood up suddenly. Mom, can I ask you something? Elena was in the middle of another tense exchange with Vorthan. She held up one finger in a wait gesture, finished her sentence with diplomatic precision, then muted the channel. What is it, sweetheart? The hostages. Where exactly are they being held? Reactor level 3, Section C. Why? And the terrorists have explosives near the coolant systems in Section B? Yes. Elena's eyes narrowed. Maya, what are you thinking? The ventilation system. Maya brought up her sketches on the main display. Everyone in the command center turned to look. See, stations like this have independent air circulation for the reactor levels because of radiation containment. But the maintenance access tunnels run parallel to the ventilation shafts. They're too small for most species, but not for humans. Especially small humans. My primary brain started processing the implications while my secondary brain screamed in horror. Absolutely not, said Elena immediately. Mom, just listen. The terrorists are monitoring the 2 main access points, but they can't monitor the ventilation because it's internal to the walls. If someone could get into the maintenance tunnels from the exterior docking level, they could navigate through to Section C. Someone, repeated Brutaner. You mean you? Maya met his gaze without flinching. I'm the smallest person here. I've studied station schematics for 3 weeks. And I know hostage psychology because my mom's been teaching me since I was 6. You're 9 years old, Keswick said flatly. 9.5. And that's exactly why it would work. They're not expecting a child. Nobody expects a child. Maya looked at her mother. The honey badger doesn't wait for orders. Mom, sometimes you have to be the chaos variable. Elena looked like she'd aged 10 years in 10 seconds. She glanced at Commander Thrace, who looked equally stricken. Then at Brutaner, whose scales had gone completely white with shock. This is insane, Elena whispered. It's adaptive thinking, said Maya quietly. You taught me that. When normal options are exhausted, you find abnormal ones. Commander Thrace reviewed the schematics. The tunnels are barely 18 inches wide in some sections. I've seen the specifications. Even our smallest special forces operators couldn't fit. But I can. Maya pulled up detailed measurements. I checked. 18 inches is tight but manageable if you know how to compress your shoulders. I've been practicing in the Academy's crawl training modules. You've been what? I couldn't help asking. Practicing. I wanted to understand confined space navigation. It seemed useful. This child had been preparing for something like this. Not specifically this situation, but the concept of being somewhere unexpected, doing something impossible. Brutaner studied the layout for a long moment. His tactical mind was clearly at war with every protective instinct a sentient being possessed. Even if she reaches Section C, then what? She's one child against trained terrorists. She doesn't fight them. Elena's voice had changed. She wasn't speaking as a mother anymore. She was speaking as a professional negotiator, analyzing an impossible problem. She creates a distraction, something that pulls their attention away from the hostages long enough for a tactical team to breach. A distraction, I said, weakly. You want to use your daughter as bait. I want to give 47 people a chance to live. Elena looked at Maya. But I won't order you to do this. This is your choice. Maya was 9 years old. She should have been playing games, learning mathematics, enjoying a childhood free from the weight of life or death decisions. Instead, she stood in a military command center, looking at her mother with absolute clarity. I can do this, she said simply. The next 2 hours were a blur of preparation that felt both incredibly professional and completely unhinged. Commander Thrace assembled a breach team. Brutaner calculated optimal timing for the assault. Elena continued negotiations to keep Vorthan talking and distracted. And Maya put on a specialized suit designed for hazardous environment work, modified to fit her small frame. I helped her check the equipment, mostly because my hands were shaking too badly to do anything else useful. Observer Vector, she said while testing her communication link. You look worried. Because this entire plan is terrifying and should never work. Should never is different from will never. She smiled. Besides, I've studied Jarkeen psychology. They respect boldness. If this goes wrong and they catch me, I just have to convince them I'm more valuable as a statement than a casualty. You're 9 years old. 9.5. And that's my advantage. Vorthan expects military intervention. Trained soldiers following predictable assault patterns. He doesn't expect a kid crawling through the walls. She finished her equipment check. The honey badger doesn't wait for orders, remember? I'm beginning to hate honey badgers. Most people do. That's what makes them effective. Maya entered the maintenance tunnel through an exterior access hatch on the docking level. The last thing I saw before she disappeared into the narrow passage was her giving a thumbs up, a human gesture that supposedly meant confidence but looked more like a tiny act of defiance against common sense. The command center monitored her progress through a micro camera attached to her suit. The tunnels were dark, cramped, and filled with exposed pipes that radiated heat. Maya navigated through them like water flowing downhill, finding gaps that seemed impossibly small and squeezing through with practiced efficiency. Elena watched the feed without blinking. Her hands were steady on the communication console. But I noticed she'd activated a secondary channel, a direct link to Maya's suit that only the two of them could hear. I saw her lips move occasionally, speaking words of encouragement that a mother gives when sending her child into danger. 40 minutes into the crawl, Maya reached a junction point near Section C. Through the ventilation grate, we could see the hostages. They were huddled together in a storage area, guarded by 3 Jarkeen terrorists with weapons that could vaporize a Kralthine in seconds. Mom, Maya's voice came, through soft and clear. I'm in position. Hostages look scared but unharmed. 3 guards visible. I don't see explosives in this section. Copy that. Elena's voice was pure professional calm. Breach team is ready. Your signal will be the distraction. Make it count, sweetheart. Always do. What happened next would be analyzed in tactical academies for decades. Maya didn't burst through the ventilation grate shooting or fighting. She didn't announce her presence with dramatic flair. Instead, she did something so unexpected that it took everyone, including the terrorists, several seconds to process. She started singing. Not loudly, not aggressively. Just a simple children's song in what my translator identified as English, her voice carrying through the ventilation system with an eerie, echoing quality that made it sound like it was coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. The Jarkeen guards froze. They looked around, trying to identify the source of the sound. The hostages looked confused but hopeful. And Maya kept singing, her voice steady and clear, while she carefully removed the ventilation grate with tools from her suit. What is she doing? Keswick asked. Creating uncertainty, Brutaner said softly. Look at the guards. They don't know how to respond. Is it a psychological weapon? A technical malfunction? A ghost? Jarkeen culture has strong superstitions about voices from nowhere. Maya finished removing the grate and dropped into the storage area. She landed between the hostages and the guards, small and impossibly out of place in her oversized hazard suit. One of the guards raised his weapon. Maya stopped singing. She looked directly at the armed terrorist and smiled. "Hi. I'm here to negotiate your surrender. Also, my friends are about to blow the doors in approximately 5 seconds, so you might want to put that down." The guard stared at her. The hostages stared at her. Even through the camera feed, I could see the absolute chaos of conflicting emotions playing across everyone's faces. 4 seconds, Maya added helpfully. The guard's hesitation cost him everything. The breach team blasted through both access points simultaneously, moving with precision that would have made Brutaner proud. Flash grenades disoriented the terrorists. Stun weapons dropped them before they could reach their detonators. The entire engagement lasted 7 seconds. 7 seconds to end a 12-hour standoff because a 9-year-old girl had crawled through walls and sung a children's song at armed terrorists. The hostages were evacuated. The terrorists were taken into custody. The reactor level was secured, and Maya sat in the corner of Section C, drinking juice from a pouch, and explaining to a bewildered hostage that yes, she was really 9.5, and yes, this was officially the weirdest day of her life too. Elena reached her daughter first, sweeping her into a hug that looked like it might never end. Commander Thrace and Brutanor arrived moments later, followed by half the breach team who seemed torn between saluting the child and checking if she was a hallucination. "That was the most reckless, dangerous, brilliant tactical intervention I've ever witnessed," said Commander Thrace. She looked at Elena. "Your daughter is terrifying." "I know," Elena replied. "Trust me. I know." We returned to the academy 4 days later. The council had requested a full report on the Kelthar 9 incident. Specifically, they wanted to know how a training cadet had ended up resolving a hostage crisis that had stumped 3 tactical teams and 2 negotiation specialists. The meeting took place in the Grand Chamber, a massive room designed to hold representatives from dozens of species. I stood near the back, watching Maya sit between her mother and Brutaner at the reporting table. She looked even smaller in the formal setting, but her posture was confident. Council member Thrace, Aquilian with silver spines and shrewd eyes, spoke first. "Cadet Kowalski, your actions at Kelthar 9 violated numerous protocols regarding civilian involvement in military operations." "Yes, sir," Maya agreed. "You placed yourself in extreme danger without proper authorization or training." "Yes, sir. You improvised a tactical approach that had no precedent in Academy doctrine." "Yes, sir." She paused. "But 47 people went home alive. That seemed more important than protocols." Thrace studied her for a long moment. "Why did you sing?" "Jarkeen culture has superstitions about disembodied voices. I read about it in the Academy cultural database. Singing made them uncertain, confused. Confusion creates hesitation. Hesitation creates opportunity." She looked up at the council. "Also, it was a song my grandmother taught me. She always said music could get you through anything. I figured it was worth a try." "Worth a try," Thrace repeated. "You risked your life on folklore and a grandmother's wisdom. And mathematics. And tactical analysis. And understanding human psychology." Maya's voice remained steady. Maya's voice. "But yeah, the singing part was definitely a grandmother wisdom gamble." Several council members made sounds that might have been laughter or horror. I genuinely couldn't tell. Brutaner stood. "Council members, if I may address the chamber. Cadet Kowalski's actions at Kelthar 9 demonstrate exactly what I've been trying to explain in my training modification proposals. Traditional doctrine has value, but it doesn't account for adaptive thinking, for chaos variables, for being the unpredictable element in a predictable situation." "You're defending a child, breaking military protocol," said another council member. "I'm defending results. 47 lives saved. 0 casualties. Mission success by any metric." His scales shifted to determined gold. "If our academy is so rigid that we punish success because it doesn't fit our comfortable definitions of proper procedure, then we're training soldiers for a galaxy that doesn't exist anymore." The chamber erupted in debate. Species argued about protocol versus pragmatism. rules versus results, traditional warfare versus whatever humans called their approach to conflict resolution. It was loud, chaotic, and absolutely unprecedented in council history. Maya sat quietly through all of it, occasionally sipping water and looking remarkably unbothered by dozens of powerful beings arguing about whether her actions were heroic or criminal. Finally, Council Member Thress called for silence. "We will make our decision. Cadet Kowalski, please approach." Maya walked to the center of the chamber. She looked impossibly small under the domed ceiling that soared hundreds of feet above. "This council has debated your actions extensively," Thress said. "We've reviewed tactical reports, psychological analyses, and cultural impact assessments. We've consulted with experts across 12 disciplines." He paused, and I swear I saw the calmer hint of a smile on his normally stern face. "And we've concluded that you are absolutely terrifying and should probably come with a warning label." Maya blinked. "Sir? However, terrifying effectiveness is still effectiveness. Your actions saved lives. Your methods, while unorthodox, achieved results that traditional approaches could not. Therefore, this council officially recognizes your contribution to the Kelthar 9 resolution." He gestured to an aide, who brought forward a small case. "This is the Star of Valor, typically awarded to combat veterans. You're the youngest being ever to receive it. Try not to make that a pattern." The chamber applauded. Even the council members who'd been arguing for punishment joined in, because apparently saving 47 lives transcended political disagreement. Maya accepted the award with a dignity that seemed far beyond her years. "Thank you, Council Member Thress. I promise to only break protocols when absolutely necessary to save lives. That's what concerns me," Thress muttered. Later, back at the academy, I found Maya in the training bay where this had all started. She was running simulations, still trying to optimize her chaos variables and improve success rates that were already unprecedented. "Cadet Kowalski," I sat beside her. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure, Observer Vector. When you were in that tunnel, crawling toward armed terrorists, were you scared?" She thought about that for a moment. "Yeah. Terrified, actually. My hands were shaking so bad I almost couldn't work the grate screws." "Then why did you keep going?" "Thanks. Because being scared doesn't mean you can't do something. It just means you do it while scared." She looked at me with those clear brown eyes. "The honey badger is probably scared sometimes too. It's just that being scared is less important than protecting what matters." And what mattered at Kelthar 9? 47 people. My mom's reputation as a negotiator, showing the galaxy that humans can be trusted in crisis situations. Also, proving that Instructor Brutaner's training modifications work. She grinned. And maybe, just a little bit, showing that kids aren't useless in emergencies. I looked at this remarkable, terrifying, brilliant child who'd somehow changed military doctrine by talking back to an instructor and saved dozens of lives by singing in a ventilation shaft. "Your species is going to reshape the galaxy," I said. "I'm not sure if that's wonderful or catastrophic. Probably both." Maya returned to her simulation. "That's kind of our specialty." Instructor Brutaner entered the bay, his scales the calm gold of contentment. "Cadet Kowalski, the Council has approved my request to establish a new training program, Adaptive Tactical Response. It will focus on unconventional problem-solving, chaos variable integration, and what we're officially calling dynamic threat assessment." "Officially calling?" Maya caught the emphasis. "Unofficially, the other. Instructors are calling it the Honey Badger Protocol." He almost smiled. "You've created a legacy, Cadet. Every student who passes through this academy will now be taught that sometimes the best tactical response is to be the element nobody predicted. Does that mean I don't have to scrub the waste reclamation systems?" "You never had to scrub the waste reclamation systems. That was motivation to improve your performance." He paused. "Though if you ever reference Earth animals in my presence again, I may reconsider." Maya laughed, a sound of pure joy that seemed to brighten the entire training bay. And I realized something important. Humans didn't just bring chaos to the galaxy. They brought hope. The hope that rigid systems could adapt. That impossible problems had creative solutions. That a 9-year-old girl could stand before trained killers and make them hesitate through sheer unexpected audacity. The honey badger didn't wait for orders. It just did what needed doing, fearless and determined. against all odds and common sense. And somehow, that simple philosophy had changed everything. Months later, I received a message from Maya's family. She'd returned to Earth to continue her regular education, but she included a note thanking me for helping her during her time at the academy. She also sent an image of an actual honey badger, along with a caption that read, "Still not waiting for orders." I displayed that image in my office, where every cadet who passed through could see it, a reminder that sometimes the smallest, most unexpected element could change everything. That courage didn't require size or age or traditional training. That thinking like a chaos agent was just as valuable as thinking like a soldier. The Galactic Protocol Academy would never be the same. And honestly, that was probably for the best, because the instructor had lost his voice, not to defeat, but to wonder. Wonder at what was possible when you stopped following the old maps and started drawing new ones. When you stopped being predictable and started being the thing nobody saw coming. When you stopped waiting for orders and just became the honey badger the galaxy needed.